Hey everyone, it's Lexi. So in today's video I'm going to be doing a spoiler-free review of Quiet, The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking by Susan Cain. And for those of you who do know, this was the Tales and Teacups book club pick for the month of November. So if you still want to participate in it, this is just going to be my review. I plan on having the discussion video later this month. So if you want to participate in that, I'll have everything linked down below and I'll tag the announcement video so you can go check that out so you can learn kind of all about that. So yeah, to start out, I will say this book was amazing. This book has been on my shelf for a couple years now, I want to say, and I finally picked it up now. But I feel like the timing of when I read this was really important. As I said in my kind of TBR video, that I've been going through some things with someone in my master's program who's kind of made some comments about me being kind of soft-spoken and all of that stuff. So this book could not come at a better time, I'll tell you that. So you can tell by all the tabs in here that I loved it. Just the introduction alone was like shook me. So I think the author does, like, this author is obviously very, like, did a very good job at researching this book and providing examples of like what the current literature has kind of shown, and just kind of like the psychology behind introverts and just kind of how they are different from extroverts, and how kind of that extroverted idealism came about, in especially in like the workforce, and how that kind of happens and everything. So this book's kind of split up into different chapters of just like everything. So the first one is like part one, the introvert ideal, which talks about kind of the rise of extroverts and how that ideology really began to shift in kind of the like 1920s, I want to say. And then just kind of like the second one is part two, is your biology yourself. So that's basically talking about the brain chemistry and just how the brains of introverts are a little bit different than those of extroverts. And then part three is, do cultures have an extrovert ideal, which talks about the Asian American kind of culture, like culture clash that a lot of Asian Americans have with their Asian upbringing. That is like the expected like kind of way to behave, and they like in compared to like the American school system. And then part four is how to love, how to work, which explains like how you can kind of, introverts can work with extroverts, how extroverts need to work with introverts. So overall, this book was a solid 5 out of 5 stars book for me. It just really hit me from the first page, like especially like basically the first book is that like the first like paragraph, she's talking about Rosa Parks, who's described as being very soft-spoken, shy, and just how kind of with her temperament and just like how she handled like with everything, like with her refusing to give up her seat for a white person, like how her temperament, the reaction for that would not have been the same, and just kind of how her silent power in that. And I just thought it was so interesting, and it talks about like all the things that would not have existed without like introverts, like Harry Potter, Google, like, and all the stuff that a lot of like what we know in both pulp culture and just kind of like science is very much based on introverts. So I think this book did a really good job at shedding light on kind of like the highs and lows of introverts, and how society hasn't really accepted them, and just how like society in general is tends to be more extroverted, how they kind of favor that kind of presentation of yourself, and how it said like probably like half of us are introverts and extroverts. So I really like that, and just kind of some of the things that it said in here. Let's see, just kind of like between temperament and like personality, and like how like basically they can tell if a baby is going to turn out to be an introvert or extrovert based on their like a high sensitivity. So if a baby is really reactive to crying, they're high sensitive, so they are overstimulated in an environment, so that makes them stand back, which I just like, which was really, I found to be really interesting. There were some things that I didn't think really applied much to me, but overall like I could relate to a lot of aspects about this book, and it made me really see myself really differently, and just kind of it kind of made me realize that kind of the things that I am, like being quiet and a thinker and just really thinking about what I say and observing everyone and reading them makes me, like, it kind of made me realize that that in itself is a power, and just how, like, there's like kind of fake it till you make it mentality sometimes, and just having to step outside of your comfort zone, and that's okay if you do that for a couple minutes, and then, or like a couple hours or so if you have to be like that at work, but then kind of going back and reflecting on yourself and just kind of going back into yourself and just finding that balance between an introvert and an extrovert, especially if you do that for your work. But it made me feel really positive about myself and just like everything. Especially it makes me think like a lot of society's connotations of introverts, like they need us more than they realize, and just kind of the flaws of both kind of extrovert, like the flaws of both extroverts and introverts. And it was just really interesting. The author does a really good job at kind of finding examples that tie into kind of her kind of main points of this book. With, like, for example, there's like Rosa Parks and Gandhi, I think she talks about in here. Like, she talks about a lot of people and just how things would be very kind of different if these, like, if different people were put in these situations, and just kind of tying everything back into that. I think this book is really good, and I highly recommend it for anyone who is an introvert. Like, I think, like, I'm kind of sad that I waited so long to read this, but I feel like also just kind of with everything going on in my life, like, this was the perfect time for me to read it. So I think if you are kind of like in a place where you kind of are not feeling very good about yourself in terms of your introvert like personality, and just like if there's other stuff and like you're struggling with that, I think this is like a really optimal time to read this. This might even be a good book to read if you're starting to go into university, because it does kind of talk about kind of how schools are kind of aimed towards extrovert learning and just kind of working in groups, and how for introverts that's not always the best learning environment for them. And they talked about like Harvard Business School and just how everyone has to be like extroverted. They have to go out every night. They have to be socializing. I would die. Like, I would hate that. And so just talking about how introverts kind of feel in that environment, like, I think it's very interesting just how our whole society is kind of shaped itself around kind of extroverts, like kind of making it so they can thrive. So I just think that's really interesting and can lead to a good discussion, I think. So like I said, I highly recommend this book, and like I said, you can pick it up now. You might want to wait until you're at like a pivotal point in your life to read this, but it is just an amazing book regardless. And I think a lot of people, it's nonfiction, but it's written kind of in a way that I think everyone can really kind of easily read it. It's not like too hard. It's not like reading a textbook. This one is more kind of conversational with a lot of facts to back it up. Like, the last like third of the book is literally just references. So yeah, I cannot recommend this book enough, and I'm so happy I picked this book up when I did. So that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this little review. So if you want to participate in the discussion later this month, please let me know down below, and go check out my announcement video where everything will be linked so you can learn more about it. And then the Goodreads group is always linked down below, so you can go find that. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye, guys.